Hello everyone, and welcome to our first full new unit in 7th grade math this year. So we're going to do a probability unit now. So today is kind of an introduction, just some terms and some general ideas as to what probability is. Hopefully we might be able to get a portion of the final unit done. We'll have to see. But today we're going to look at probability. So what is probability in general? In general, it's just the chance or the likelihood of something happening. I guess I'll say that something will happen. Okay, and the probability of anything occurring is always going to be between 0 and 1. Or we can think of it as between 0% or no chance, all the way to 100%, and it's a definite. Okay, so other ways to think about that are in decimal form. This would be 0 all the way up to 1. And they can also be measured in fraction form. So for example, if the whatever is 0 out of the total, and this would be whole total out of the total. Okay, so fraction form of 1 would be just 1, basically. Okay, so generally speaking, we, for example, if you flip a coin, chance of heads, as long as it's a fair coin, is 1/2 as a fraction, or 50% as a decimal. As a percent, or 0.5 as a decimal. So probabilities can be represented in those three ways. Okay, so now some terms in probability. First of all, we call kind of any type we have in a process. So an experiment is kind of a process in which there are one or more possible outcomes. Okay, and outcomes are just the results of the experiment. Okay, so one or more possible results, each of which depend on chance. Okay, so for example, the experiment could be flipping a fair coin. Okay, and if we are flipping a fair coin, then the outcomes, sorry about that, outcomes be either heads or there'll be tails. And often we write those outcomes as H comma T. Okay, and the sample set is the set of all possible outcomes. In this case, set of heads or tails. Just to give you some notation, I'm not super concerned about sample set right now, but just to give you some notation as to what all the outcomes can look like. You could write it this way, that's fine as well for right now. Okay, so an event in probability, and you'll hear this term used a lot later on, is either just one outcome or a set of outcomes. So, and we can write P of an event occurring. That's probability of an event. Okay, so from our example above, it could be P of heads, which would be, as we said earlier, 1/2 or 50% or 0.5 as a decimal. Or you could say P of, let's say we flip it 2 times. And we could say P of both heads. So that would be possibility of, set of outcomes. So we can have that kind of situation where you have a set of outcomes and you say the probability of that event. So an event can be just one outcome or it can be multiple outcomes depending on what we're looking at as far as what we're calculating the probability of. So currently you don't need to worry too much about the different options for events versus outcomes. Just kind of know that that's kind of the results right now of an experiment. So final example, just to give you some, here's one more term, then we didn't do the equally likely. So equally likely events in an experiment. This is when the outcomes, and often when all outcomes have an equal chance of occurring. Okay, so for example, so if we roll the die, or a number cube, you'll sometimes see it referred to as a number cube instead of just a die, because that's just one number cube. Okay, so that's our experiment. Okay, and the outcomes, the possible outcomes, are you could roll a 1, or a 2, or a 3, or a 4, or a 5, or a 6. And each one of these outcomes is equally likely. Because they have the same chance of happening. Okay, or obviously an equal chance of happening. Oops, sorry about that. So each of these outcomes is equally likely because they each have the same or the equal chance of happening. So, and in this particular case, P of, let's say, an event of, let's say P of 1 equals P of 2, they're all equal to each other, equals P of 3, etc. And the chance of any one of those things occurring is 1 in 6, or around 16.7%, or 0.16. Okay, so now you're not going to have to worry too much today about calculating probabilities yet, but just kind of having some idea what those things look like. And I want you now to go ahead and do the practice that is attached to this assignment. Have a great day.